Jujutsu Kaisen is a gosh darn incredible anime with insanely animated fights, wild powers and abilities, and dare I say it has a really fun and engaging story where I think I actually love every character in it. And every battle in this show has so much weight and every fight seems like it could swing either way, and it's really hard to tell who will come out on top. And one concept in particular that makes so many of these fights so dynamic and fresh is the addition of domain expansions. Hello, my name is Gabriel Galway and I am an ugly goblin again. And after much experimentation and frantic note-taking in the middle of the night, after waking up in a cold sweat with a head full of ideas, I have finally come up with a fun yet elegant formula for implementing domain expansions into your games. So, make sure you've got your cursed fingers to nibble on, and make sure you like and subscribe before we get lost in this domain of new possibilities. But first, for anyone out there who is confused as to what are domain expansions and what is Jujutsu Kaisen, very briefly, Jujutsu Kaisen is an anime that has taken the world by storm with its incredible animation, dark storytelling, and rich characters. It's set in a world where curses manifest as physical monsters that threaten humanity, and Jujutsu sorcerers, those who are able to wield curses or cursed energy in the form of what are essentially superpowers, use these abilities to exorcise the evil curses. But one ability that certain powerful curses or Jujutsu sorcerers can use is the power of domain expansions. The domain creator traps its enemies and itself in what is essentially a pocket dimension of sorts, themed around this creator's abilities. This volcano head man, for example, traps people in a fiery hellscape. And this patch-faced scary boy brings people into a dimension filled with grasping limbs. But using your domain expansion requires a lot of energy and often exhausts the user. And so typically, they're only used as a last resort. But being trapped in this thematic dimension might not be so bad for some, you might think. But the real kicker of this ability is that any attack the creator makes on a creature while they're trapped in their domain automatically hits and cannot be avoided in any way. So, most of the time, being trapped in a domain almost means certain death. The show, however, has shown us that not all hope is lost when you're trapped in these scenarios, and some people have both broken into and out of these domains. And so, with all of that information covered, we now need to figure out how to create a set of rules that are not overly complicated, so we can easily implement them into our D&D games. But in order to do this, we need to make sure our domain expansion rules cover the following points. So, number one, creating a domain is typically a last resort, and doing so takes a large toll on the user and leaves them vulnerable. Secondly, every attack made by the domain's creator needs to automatically hit its target.
Sir, I'm arrested.
Thirdly, each domain typically has some sort of specific gimmick and unique environmental hazards that take effect. 4, we need to design mechanics to allow people to both break in and out of the domain, so they're not always completely helpless when it goes off. And then finally, we need to package this mini system with a warning to DMs that this is a very easy way to TPK your party. So you should use this with caution. So let's start with our first point, the fact that creating a domain expansion typically leaves the user very vulnerable. So we want it to only be used as a last resort. So during combat, if the creature feels like it's going to lose unless something changes, only then will it activate its domain expansion. I have a couple of simple rules for this. Number one, the creature only uses its domain expansion when it's fallen below half of its HP, which is an optional rule and is more of a role-playing suggestion more than anything else. Number 2, when a creature creates its domain, it halves its current hit points in order to do so. And then thirdly, it must also spend an action to create the domain itself. When they activate their domain, they pull every creature within 30 feet of them of their choosing into the domain. Now, moving on to our second point that we need to cover. Once the domain is established, every attack made by its creator against a creature within the domain automatically hits. Also, if this domain creator uses an ability or a spell that forces a creature within the domain to make either a saving throw that uses a physical ability, so strength, dexterity, or constitution.
Cast Fireball.
Dude,
Cast Fireball.
why? What is that gonna accomplish?
It's gonna help. I'm gonna cast Fireball. It's gonna help.
That creature automatically fails their saving throw.
Skadoosh.
One thing I noticed when I was creating this mini system is that domains pair up really nicely with layer actions in D&D. So for our third point, I thought that giving creatures the ability to create domains that already have a layer action just makes total sense. And when they use their domain expansion, you can consider allowing that creature a second use of one of their domain features on an initiative count of 10 each round, alongside the one they already are given, which happens on an initiative count 20. And this can be how you flavor the environmental hazards in the domain, using the layer action that that creature already has. However, what if a creature, doesn't typically have layer actions, but you want to give them the ability to use a domain expansion? My suggestion first is to give them one use of a layer action per turn while their domain is active. But what layer actions do you give them? Well, it just so happens I have an answer for that too. The abilities of domain expansions in Jujutsu Kaisen are iconic and really change the flow of each fight, but also just make the fights beautiful to watch. All of a sudden, the area that the fight is taking place in completely changes, and the dynamic of everything is completely flipped on its head. And so I had to give some mechanics to the most well-known domains of this series. And of course, they're, a little on the overpowered side, but I mean, they've got to be, right? Also, I have kept them super simple. So some of you hardcore fans might be a little disappointed, but here are my reasonings first. First of all, by keeping them simple and broad in design, it's easier to give that ability to almost any creature in Dungeons & Dragons. And by keeping a base structure simple, it gives you more room as a DM to customize these abilities yourself as you see fit. Feel free to add other complicated mechanics to them if you wish, but I believe when you add something new to your game, it's far better to keep it simple so as not to confuse your players, slow down the pace of the game so you have to explain things, or just sound like you're making up rules on the spot one after the other. Things like this can be really frustrating and can suddenly turn this very cool new feature that you've added to your game to make it more interesting into something that's now having the opposite effect. But let's have a look at some of these domain abilities and how to use them. And just a small heads up for anyone who hasn't watched at least the first season of Jujutsu Kaisen, there are a few spoilers ahead. I'll be talking very briefly about the uses of different domain abilities used by certain characters, and backing that up with snippets from the anime itself. So if you want to skip past this part, just click over here on this point of the video and you can skip past all the spoilers.
Okay, let's go.
Starting off, we have Patchface, or Mahito, and his self-embodiment of perfection. Like I said, I'm keeping it very simple, and this thing summons a bunch of hands, and so this ability allows you to select a target and automatically restrain them as a layer action. A creature can spend an action to attempt to escape this grapple by making a strength or dexterity saving throw against the domain's DC. And to calculate a domain's DC, it is 8 plus the domain owner's wisdom modifier plus half of that creature's CR level. Alternatively, other creatures can also spend an action to try and break someone else free by making a strength check against the same DC. It's simple, it's clean, and it adds a whole cool dynamic to your fights. Next, we have the beautiful Gojo's Unlimited Void. When you use this domain ability as a layer action, you select one creature, and that creature cannot make attack rolls against you or target you with a spell until the end of their next turn. Obviously, I can't just let you use this for all creatures, as the game is just over by that point if you were able to select all creatures all at once and just stop them playing the game. So I figured this was like a nice alternative. You could also change this ability to giving a creature the stunned condition instead, but I figured this method is a little kinder and isn't just a "you have no turn now" ability, which feels like a very bullyish thing to do as a DM. Jogo, the Volcano Head Man, is up next with his Coffin of the Iron Mountain. Every enemy in this domain automatically takes 10 fire damage during this creature's layer action. Simple, clean, that's it. And what I love about this one is it's so easy to modify too. If you have an ice giant using this domain, just change it to cold damage. Or if you feel like 10 damage is too little or too much, just alternate that damage. This also allows you to change up environments so easily in combat. 1 minute the player's in a dark woods, and the next suddenly they're transported to an icy mountaintop or fiery hellscape. Go wild with it. And then finally, I wanted to add Megumi's imperfect domain, the Chimera Shadow Garden. This one is for any of your creatures who are maybe still developing their domain, but aren't quite there yet. This domain allows the creature to summon a shadow as a layer action, like the shadow creature, the stat block of the shadow. Have fun playing with the sizes and shapes of these shadows too, or feel free to use a different thematic creature for this. Perhaps a Fey Lord instead summons 1d4's worth of pixies each round as their layer action, but have them come out disfigured and imperfect. Additionally, if you want to have an imperfect domain without the automatic hits of a layer action, but still want to spice up an encounter, just do that. Have a creature who can create a domain where everybody is suddenly teleported into a maze or on top of some stone obelisk in the middle of space. And the only way to leave is to defeat the domain's creator. Also consider giving that creature the ability to use their move action to teleport to any place in their domain so they can pick off players one by one. The potential for using domains in D&D are endless. However, as unbeatable as domains appear to be, Jujutsu Kaisen has proven time and time again that each domain can be broken into and escaped from in some shape or form. But escaping and entering are two very different things, and they seem to require two separate methods. To keep it simple, I will be putting it down to a strength check for entering and a concentration check for escaping, but with a price. Only spellcasters who have enough cursed energy and the potential to maybe one day create a domain of their own can attempt to escape a domain. And to escape, you need to spend your action to attempt a concentration check, as well as spending a 3rd level spell slot or higher. The DC for your concentration check is equal to the domain's DC. When you succeed on your concentration check, a 5 diameter hole exiting the domain opens up in front of you, and you can spend 5 foot of movement to pass through it and exit the domain. And when you do, the hole disappears. However, you can also try to keep this hole open. At the start of each of your turns, you must make a concentration check in order to keep it open and spend 1 additional 3rd level spell or higher in order to do so. While keeping this hole open as well, you cannot move. Doing this allows your allies to attempt to also exit the domain. Similarly, if someone wishes to break into a domain, they can do so with pure brute force, just like Itadori. You must spend an action to attempt a strength check against the domain's DC. But once you're in, the domain closes behind you and you can't leave the same way. All in all, the concept of adding domains to your game, in my opinion, is a great way to add some extra spice to your encounters. But be cautious when using them, as they're a very easy way to TPK the entire party. So I deliver this to you with caution. Use this ability sparingly, and only maybe when your party is totally destroying your big bad. And I hope you have fun with it. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts on this are. What's your favorite anime? And is there a gimmick in anime that you'd like to see me try to implement into D&D and build some rules for? And if you haven't done so, please like this video and subscribe. And if you want to help me build future homebrew systems and subclasses and other neat little things, please consider hopping over to my Patreon. It's a really great way to support what I do. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful Christmas. That's all for me. Happy gaming, and I'm going to return to the...
Wait, just before you go, I want to give a special mention to all of the incredible animators who've worked on Jujutsu Kaisen, especially in the second season with Mappa Studios. There's a lot out there with Mappa Studios and how poorly they have treated all of their animators, but despite that, these animators have created some incredible pieces. And I just want to say well done to all of you for enduring such a rotten time, being mispaid, being given horrible hours, and still yet creating such a masterpiece of a second season. And well done to all of you. I've tried to find as many credits as I can to list here all the artists who worked on it. As a fellow artist myself, I just wanted to do this for whatever it's worth. Thank you for giving us Jujutsu Kaisen 2.